We are watching John's backstroke over the water. Commentary by Coach Chris. First pass as I watch, I like his stillness of his head. I like his head a little bit more back, but as we watch him, he's got some solid fundamentals. Really, we're just seeing a little breakdown on the wall there, a little miscue on the timing of the breakout. But he's got a good shoulder roll, and he actually does a really good job of grabbing water with his hands. Now, when we're at the underwater video, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I like how he's pulling close to the body. So let's go back through and break it down a little bit. So as we frame forward, you can see the lift he's getting on that shoulder roll. That's actually some of the better shoulder roll of the group. And you can see his chest on the left side is out, his shoulder's out. It's coming all the way up towards his chin. That shoulder roll is initiating the hand pull. Here you see his shoulder out and up before his hand comes out. I mean, that's spot on what he wants to do. Thumb out, he's swapping at the top. Hand's still a little back. He's not quite rotating that pinky down. You can kind of see that at this point. If you look at, you can see his fingertips. You can see his palm. So that's kind of the shape of his hand right now, with his hand being bent back at the wrist. This is pretty common for athletes of his age. Really, the problem is when he gets here, well, it's caused by two issues. Let's frame forward and see if we can get a better look. All right, so this is a good angle. As he comes up, he's thumb up. But as he gets here, you can see his arms start to bend. You can see this bend to the elbow. He's breaking down that straight arm coming over the top, and he's starting to swing the hand back. He's rotated it a little bit, but he's not rotating the pinky down. And this is caused by a combination of things. The first thing he's doing is he's reaching straight back over his head. So I'm going to draw just a little head and shoulders figure. Okay, there's your head and shoulders. I'm drawing with the mouse, so this isn't as artistic as I usually like it. And what he's doing is, as he's coming over his head, he's trying to reach his hand like that. So if you have the head, he's reaching his hand in front of his head. And that tends to be out of position. This isn't quite where he wants to swim. You don't want to reach in that way. But you can see how you'd have to bend the elbow because of shoulder flexibility. It's just not possible to get the hand in that way. And that's what's causing that hand to dip back as well. He's got to bend all those joints to get his hand to enter in that space. Now, if we go and watch a high-level backstroker, they're swimming this way. So there we have our arm. It's almost like a Y, like a very skinny Y. And that's kind of like what I tell my athletes. They need to make sure that they're entering their hand. They need to make sure that they're entering they're not trying to swim backstroke with their arm like an L, like the letter L. They want to make sure that they're swimming that backstroke. This is the head. Oh, that's horrible. You got the head. You're going to reach outside of the shoulders. You want to be bringing the arms in like a little skinny Y. That's a much more natural position for that arm to sweep out and to roll the shoulder down and back. And that's the only thing that I'm noticing is I can tell that that's happening because you can see he keeps his pull, which is actually really good. He keeps it shallow. So he's getting a good pull path, but he's not quite getting what he should be getting from the power of the pull. Considering how good and tight he's pulling into his body, he's going to lose some power. So that's part of it. He's reaching kind of in front of the head, not outside the shoulder as his hand comes in. Okay. And the other problem is once we get to the top, once we get to this frame, he needs to rotate. He's rotating from the wrist. So he's rotating from the wrist. And what that's going to do is it's going to turn each of the joints, and it's going to actually cause the arm to bend. And the other way for him to think about it is to rotate with a straight arm, but focus on rotating that pinky down from this shoulder joint right here. If he rotates from the shoulder, he'll turn the whole hand and arm pinky down. If he rotates from that wrist, that's when you start seeing those bends in the elbow. And when you combine the two, reaching back in front of the head and trying to turn from the wrist, you end up in that position where he ends up, where his fingertips are going first into the water and his hands landing flat and arms landing flat, as opposed to knifing in with that pinky down. So that's where we get that from. Reaching back over the head instead of back kind of outside the shoulder in a little Y shape. That's what you want to do. And not turning the arm from the shoulder joint, turning it from the wrist joint as far as what he's focused on. When he thinks about his arm and he thinks about turning the hand, he's thinking from the wrist joint to turn the hand, and it's bending the elbow. He's not thinking about the shoulder joint and turning the whole arm as a unit. Very simple. He just has to learn to adjust, and that's very complex. I mean, a young athlete, especially at his age, is trying to just figure out what all he can pay attention to as far as his body. We have this mental image of our body that's giant hands and giant feet, giant lips, giant tongue, big eyes. And an athlete really has to work hard to update that and has to become more aware of those parts of our body where we don't have as much of a mental map of. So our elbow alignment, our joint alignments, our spatial relationship between different limbs of our body. They have to become a lot more advanced than what we're normally supposed to be as just humans. So he's, like any athlete, he's trying to update that and get an idea what he's doing. And it's a long, slow process. But he's got a great shoulder roll. I mean, the shoulder roll is the key to the backstroke as far as power, especially arm power. And his head stays relatively still, even with that shoulder roll. So, I mean, that's just fantastic. He has a good kick here. This is not the kick I see all the time. That's one of the issues with these videos. If you watch this kick, you see all this great white water. You see the legs going really hard. But that's one thing I want to see from John a little bit more of, is a little bit more of that kick, that leg drive. Because he does have a good kick. It's getting better. We're working it every single day. He's working hard every single day. It's just seeing this kick the whole practice, the whole set, or even seeing it the whole race. I mean, the race is where the legs tend to take a break. And so here he goes in his approach. And I mean, he's well timing his approach. The turn looks good all the way to here. And then we flip. And this is one of the weaknesses right here as we approach. John still has a child's fear of the wall. He's bringing his feet over. You'll watch him slow down the rotation and try and plant the feet as soft as possible. He's afraid of the wall. He's afraid the wall is going to hurt him. And I see this all the time in this age of athlete. That 9 to 12 range is particularly ends up being a common theme for these turns. They haven't learned to hit the wall hard, and they don't trust their body that they can time it well to actually hit it and hit the wall with as much force and body weight as possible. So you're going to watch as we frame forward. He gets a little tight, and just watch him. See how he's just waiting the absolute last minute to swing those legs down. He's waiting till all his momentum stopped because he doesn't quite want to hit the wall as hard as he can. And that's just a comfort thing. I mean, we just got to keep doing turns, keep doing turns, keep doing turns. As he gets older, he matures, he's going to get over that. But it's, he's just got to hit the wall hard. Just hit the wall harder. And, just keep doing it until you do it harder and harder and harder, and eventually you'll get over that. But it's common. It's a very common fear and a common trait for turns at this age range. We've been working hard on this underwater, and I wish he'd, keep working on it, and eventually we'll get comfortable and we'll be able to do it effectively. We'll see it on the underwater video, but I think he's doing a great job trying to improve his streamlining and his underwater kickouts. Now, one of the issues we have is his breakout. He's doing an improper breakout. And what he's doing is he's going to do a double arm backstroke move. See how he separates his hands? Both arms down, and then he starts swimming. You don't want to do both arms. The proper backstroke breakout should be one arm down. Where do we go? Should be one arm pulls through to your side, the other arm stays up. And then you're going to get into that. This arm should still be up. His other arm should be down at his side. You know, that yellow line represents his other arm. And his other arm's waiting to start pulling after he hits the surface. So one down, one up for that arm position. And just pull one to your side as you break out. And once he starts going, he gets into his regular rhythm. And again, I like this arm bend. We're going to talk about it more on the underwater video. But on above water, a still head, really nice roll of the shoulders. I mean, and a strong kick in the video. I'd like to see more of that in a race. But I see a lot of good things. And as far as his improvement over the water, it's just making sure that we're reaching a little bit more outside. Here you get a good view of it. You can see his head's here. You can see his hands entering here, directly in line. Now, if you're talking about like a Ryan Lochte or a Michael Phelps, their hand is going to be entering outside. So he needs to actually change where his hand's entering the water by moving it outside of his shoulder. About, I mean, from this angle, it looks like about 6 to 8 inches. I mean, he's really inside, and that's why you're getting that wrist bend. You have to do that to get that hand inside like that. Nobody's flexible enough to reach around their head. So, I mean, that's one little thing that he can fix. The other thing I see is you can notice his chin here is really, really tucked. And that's going to cut off air supply. You're only going to get so much air through that closed windpipe. So just lift the chin a little bit more towards the ceiling to expose that throat and open that up. Now, you know, for a 100 back, it makes a difference. For a 200 back, as he gets older and hits the 13 and up, I mean, 200 back, you need air. And you can't have a restricted throat for a whole 8 laps of backstroke. But I really love what I see with this pole. There's a lot of good fundamentals to build on, things to tweak. There's nothing glaringly, there's a lot of good stuff, and there's nothing that I see that's not normal for his age and skill level. So really solid backstroke. We got plenty to work on, but we'll talk about more stuff of that stuff when we see the underwater video.